Yes, dear colleagues, let's begin our workshop devoted to the variety of methods or some methods of literature review or literature analysis. And I'm happy to introduce to you Polina Guseva, who is our colleague from International Lab for Social Integration Research and also a teacher at the Department of Sociology at HSE. Polina has large experience of research in fields of voluntary movements, third sector, media analysis, European values, attitudes of Russian population towards sanctions, and many other subjects. And also as Polina is doing a lot of teaching also for sociology students, Polina has elaborated or prepared some workshops for them on literature review approaches, methods, and I learned about that, and I asked to share her visions with us, and Polina upgraded this workshop for PhD course. So today we have in our public, we have PhD students, first year sociology, and also the colleagues of International Lab, and also other colleagues from our projects and universities. Thank you very much, Polina. Please, you can begin your workshop.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Diana Slana, for inviting me to kind of conduct this workshop. So I basically teach types of literature review to the first year students of Bachelor of PR and Advertising. So for them, this topic would be a little bit a little bit easier, but for you, I decided to take some other types of literature review, which I hope would be more like interesting and also useful for you in the future. So let me demonstrate the presentation. So as well, if you have some questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt me, and please, if you can, do it with your voice, because sometimes I don't notice like messages in the chat, and also like your hands if you raise your hand. So don't be shy. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can ask right away. So today we're going to talk about three main and the most interesting, I guess, types of literature review is systematic literature review, qualitative evidence synthesis, and actually this one has too many names. And also last one is meta-analysis. So since in the beginning, it is a research workshop, so I would like to ask you some questions while I'm doing this presentation. So the first question would be, so what comes to your mind when you hear literature review? So I know that a lot of you, like I think everybody already has some experience with doing a literature review. So can you maybe share what you usually do when you do a literature review?
Do we do it by voice?
Excuse me?
Do we do it by voice or do we read?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then I can start. Literature review. Reading a lot of articles about one particular topic, and then making a kind of brief summary of all of them. Main ideas, trends, patterns, results.
Okay, Olga, thank you. So when you analyze literature review, so you read some kind of literature on the topic, right? And then you have some kind of a system on which you base your like synthesis of the results, for example, like methods, theories, and so on. Okay, so how do you usually search for literature?
Google Scholar.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, Google Scholar actually works. So maybe some like scientific databases, although we don't have this much databases nowadays, unfortunately. Yeah, so, okay. I see something in the chat. Scopus, I guess. Nice. So yeah, I guess then when you did your literature review before, you were just like organizing some of the research that you read by some topics, or maybe by some like methods, by results. Yeah, but when we'll be talking about literature review today, it will be much more like methodological, much more systematic. And we start with the first one, which is systematic literature review. Actually, there are a lot of types of literature reviews. And for example, in the work of Grant and Booth, well, they were analyzing types of literature review in medicine, but there is a reason for that, because, well, basically, all these systematized literature reviews came mostly from the field of medicine, because the problem with the medicine is that it is like really costly to make a lot of research, yeah, to probably know the effects of some treatments or some pills or something like this. So before doing research, researchers usually like make a lot of literature review, and in this way they were trying to conduct some kind of methodologies to make these reviews more systematic. And yeah, today we're discussing just 3 of them, and qualitative evidence synthesis is also called qualitative systematic review. So the first 2 can be a little bit confused sometimes, yeah, but we'll see what the difference is. So systematic review, here we focus on the systematic search for research. So this is actually the main point of systematic review, which makes it different from the narrative literature review, which you usually use in your like theses, in your like proposals and so on, because what you illustrated, yeah, for me, like as an example of how you do literature review, is actually has its name, and this is called narrative literature review. So you make the your review like a narrative, like some kind of not like the story, yeah, in the classical sense, but like you go with the flow. Yeah, you have some topics that are connected to each other, and you go from one topic to another, looking at the literature connected to these topics. What are the main kind of features of this review is that it's transparent in reporting methods, and also it is transparent in reporting how the search for the literature was done. Also, it summarizes evidence from literature, and it is based on some really well-specified questions. So when you do your like normal literature review, you usually have just one topic. When you do systematic review, you will have to choose 1 or 2 narrow questions, but 1 is even better than 2. And also it is suitable for some specific kind of literature reviews, yeah, because sometimes your topic can be so broad, yeah, like in the cases of your PhD thesis, that it is like really difficult to kind of come up with just one question that leads like all of your work. What are the main steps? First, you have to identify questions for your review. Also when you identified questions, so you identified what are the variables, yeah, in these questions, which you want to explore. And basically the thing here is that systematic literature review was in the beginning really close to meta-analysis, which we'll be discussing a little bit later. Then like meta-analysis is like much more like a statistical type of literature review, while systematic review is like a little bit less statistical, and it uses a little bit different methodology in how the results of the literature are analyzed. But still, firstly, like initially, this type of review focused more on qualitative studies. yeah, like meta-analysis. And that is why usually the questions that are asked in these literature reviews are also qualitative, and they are focused on the connection between some variables. After you decided which question is the most important for you, then you have to identify relevant works. And to identify relevant works, you will have to come up with some kind of guideline, yeah, for yourself. So what is the basis of the quality, for example, of the studies? Why you choose these studies and why you don't want to take in your sample some other studies? Yeah, you have to really clearly understand it when you do your sampling. Also, then you assess the quality of the studies, and when you assess the quality of the studies as well, you have to decide which will be the like your checkpoints for whether this study kind of sets your idea or not. And also whether the quality of the results that were produced in this study are good enough for you to analyze them, like in your literature review. Then you summarize the evidence and interpret the findings. So I will not elaborate on the two last points, two last steps, because we will look at them more closely when we will come to the example that Елена Ростиславовна sent you. Yeah, so I hope some of you had some time at least to look at them. Yeah, so we could also refer to them. So what strengths does this type of literature has? First, yeah, it seeks to draw together all known knowledge on the topic area. Even though you have to choose one question, yeah, or maybe like two questions, which will guide your literature review, your systematic literature review, still you can produce some quite wide research on the topic area, yeah, and not limited to maybe like some kind of just two variables. Also, when we compare like this systematic literature review to narrative literature review, or how else it is called like systematized, yeah, when you systematize somehow your literature that you read in your review, but there are no particular criteria for this systematization. This type of review claims that it has some kind of quality criteria for literature review. First is that scientific objectivity, because when you have some guidelines for how you choose your sources when you do this literature review, when you have some strict steps and some strict points which you choose for the analysis, in this kind, you can, well, call your literature review objective, yeah, because, we will talk about the negative sides a little bit later, but comparing to narrative literature review, it is considered to be more objective. Transparency is also a strength because here other researchers can see what was the process of choosing some literature for your review, what was the process of analysis, which methods of analysis you used, because there are also some variations, yeah, even though like going a little bit further, the content analysis is mostly used. And also, this allows for applicability of your literature review. So if you describe in really good details how you conducted your literature review and how you prepared for it, then it means that, well, probably other researchers can replicate your results. Even though there are also some issues about that. And rigor, so it means that in the case of systematized, yeah, or like systematic literature review, you are more accurate. Yeah, you're trying to follow some kind of procedures, and also you're like more accurate about like the content of the analysis. Yeah, because when you do narrative research, you know, you can just like skip introduction or something like this. You can read just like some parts of the results and then use them in your research. I guess like everybody sometimes makes this stuff. Yeah, because everybody has like limited amount of time. So when we're doing our literature review, we can sometimes allow ourselves like not to read like the whole paper from the beginning to the end, yeah, and not to pay attention to all the details. But this systematic literature review does not allow you to do this. And also what is good about this kind of review is that it shifts like the focus lately from the analysis of qualitative data to quantitative data, yeah, like meta-analysis, to analysis of quantitative data and mixed meta study just in one design. Because actually, when we're talking about systematic literature review, it is not sometimes that much important what kind of methodology was used. So basically, you can analyze and synthesize in one review researchers that use different methods. And it is a big strength compared to the two types of reviews that we will discuss later. Okay, so what about weaknesses? Is that, well, when you include your studies, yeah, in your sample, you still have some kind of, you know, biases towards what you're going to include, what you're not going to include. So, and it works for like all the three types of literature reviews that we're discussing today. So there is first the bias in choosing your sources. Also, it is, well, initially it was restricted to studies that include single study design. Yeah, so basically, like it was closer to meta-analysis. But right now, the first weakness doesn't matter this much. Because we can also use qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, multiple methods studies in one review. Also, it is limited about providing some kind of evidence about effectiveness. Yeah, so limited to this one, because also since systematic review came from this like medicine studies, yeah, medicine field. So firstly, initially it was focused on the effects of some treatment. And sometimes you can still see systematic reviews mostly used in medicine or in, you know, like engineering studies, and a little bit less in like sociology, for example. And also, so since sometimes it is limited to the analysis of effectiveness of some treatment, yeah, or like analysis of connection between some variables, it is hard sometimes to answer some more complex research questions using this type of literature review. Also, the weakness here is that is the issue about objectivity that we're discussing as the strength. Well, the objectivity of the results of literature review are sometimes confused with like procedural objectivity, yeah? So even though, of course, you have some kind of like procedures to sample your research for the review, you have some kind of procedures on how you analyze your review, but still, usually, when you do your review, you have some kind of like subjective decisions that you made while you're choosing what these criteria are in the first place, and also on which parts, for example, of the of the article you code, yeah, on the which part of the article you're considering as like worth including in your analysis. And also because of this, it's well, leads to replicability issue, yeah, because even though you can describe in details all of your procedures, still you have some subjective decisions made while doing these procedures. And in this way, it is difficult for other researchers to kind of like replicate your studies. And also there is still some kind of like positivist bias towards knowledge, yeah, towards what kind of literature we're including in the review, yeah, still because like medicine, qualitative studies and quantitative studies and so on. So these are basically the main like weaknesses that are like common for this kind of reviews. So let's stop here. Maybe you have any questions. Is everything clear? Okay. I see no questions yet. So maybe let's turn to an example. So there was a study, the effects of framing on environmental decisions, systematic literature review. The question is, did someone manage to maybe like read this article?
Yes,
okay.
I have read it. So like, what was the question again?
So, okay, at least one person here has read the article. Yeah, so the first question, maybe you can like summarize, like just briefly, what was this article about?
Oh.
Like maybe the main idea.
I think I didn't focus too much about the research question part. I just want to know is how they use about the literature review, like which kind of the method they use for the literature review.
Nice. Okay. I get it. So, well, basically, yeah, we're not going to focus this much on like on the content. I mean, like what this was like conducted for and what was the results. Yeah, I mean, essential results. But the aim, yeah, here as a research, as literature review was to provide some like insights into the leveraging of loss aversion bias to achieve environmental sustainability goals. So the thing is that, well, we sometimes the framing of some issues is used. Yeah, the framing is the way you present information. Yeah, if we like really rudely describe what it is. Here is the main idea was to look at different studies that examined how the frames of gain or loss, for example, were implemented and what effects it had on some kind of like decisions connected, purchase decisions, for example, yeah, connected to pro-environmental behavior. So, for example, if we say that buying new clothes instead of, I don't know, like recycling or maybe like redoing your old clothes will harm, I don't know, environment, yeah, in general. So in this case, people will look at this message and they will think that, oh yeah, then I should reduce how much money like I spent on the clothes and how often I buy it, yeah, because it's bad for environment, so to say. So this is what they were like trying to study basically. So what are these like frames? Yeah, how these decisions about consumer behavior can influence environment, yeah, and also how it is connected to the consumer behavior. Also regarding why they did literature review, is because they wanted to assess effectiveness of moderators, mediators, and nuances in wording of these frames. And their main research questions was when and why framing works, because, well, they didn't state like a nice research question, but this is the one that we can take from what they are writing in the introduction. So when we move on to the sampling, there were some kind of criteria for how the authors of this review choose which type of which papers that they are going to analyze. And the interesting thing here is that they use these PICO criteria, which are usually used in qualitative systematic research review. We're going to discuss it later. But nevertheless, probably you can adopt some sampling criteria from other types of literature reviews. It's not that's such a big problem here. So here, when they decide which papers they take, they are looking at 4 main points. First is the population. So to be analyzed, the article should focus on individual decision makers facing consumer choice. So just ordinary people, like when they making a choice when they buy something. Also, the second point is interventions. So they only focused on the effect of different framing. So in case if the article didn't have two kind of like frames that contradict each other, like loss or gain, or like positive or negative attributes, because these are like concurring frames. In this case, these articles were not taken into the sample. Also, what were the comparators, like the C here, is the 2 sides of valence here. So why they took only the articles that were using like both concurrent frames is because they wanted to compare how they work. And the outcomes should be the change in minds of target audience or target population. So, for example, the change in intention to buy some kind of product, or the change in some kind of like environmental behavior, something like this. And they didn't, or maybe the change in also like the way people think something about pro-environmental behavior and like pro-environmental consumption of some goods. Well, they found also some articles about some kind of emotional aspect, but they didn't sample it because it is not about the change in minds. Also, another criteria was not the criteria, but the process of sampling was that they only looked at Web of Science. Also, they used some particular search words. I'm sure that when you do your narrative review, you also use some kind of search words, keywords that you use when you're looking for some literature. But sometimes, like today, you can choose these keywords, tomorrow you can choose that keywords. For one like part of your review, you use one set of keywords, for another part another one. So that's not how it works in systematic literature review. All these studies that you choose should be found only with the same keywords. So here, like on the slide, you can see which keywords they used. So they combined together. I think they used or something like this. So at least one of the words from the framing part should be together with one of the words from pro-environmental behaviors. And also here we're coming to the methods. So maybe Lina can probably share what were the methods, how you understood what they did with the data, like with literature when they gathered all the data.
I think there are 5 steps. As I understand, is that there are 5 steps, right? And I think is that the sampling is the first step about the criteria selection. So, oh no, you have already mentioned it. Oh, I'm not really sure. Is that I think is that they just use the Web of Science and using the strategy, like using those as the keywords, as we know is and or all thing the functions, and then they have to do the selection and I think they have the, as I remember, is that like the flow chart is like they want to include or not include those papers.
Yeah, they had some procedures for including or excluding some papers. Yeah, so we will not pay like too much attention for this because it varies through your study. Yeah, because it like really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Yeah, so this is not basically like in the focus here, since we're just looking on the main steps. Yeah, mostly. But okay, when they collected these papers, so in the beginning, like more than 1,500, yeah, but like around 1,500. But in the end, well, they had some like a little bit more than 60 articles that they actually analyzed. And so methodology here, yeah, because after we collect these studies, after we have these articles in our hands or in our laptops, we have to do something with it. When you do something with your articles in your narrative review, you're just like try to like analyze, maybe to compare the results of the different studies with each other, yeah, maybe to make some kind of like general conclusions about what some kind of phenomenon works. But in this case, the procedures are much stricter. So usually authors use, as I mentioned before, content analysis, basically. And in this case, so there was no particular word content analysis used in this article, but the researchers used the phrase code and shit. So basically, it is like, well, closely connected to content analysis. And well, they had this coding list, and what they included here were the main descriptive information of the body of the research included. So as far as I remember, there was something like what was the population of the study, what were the variables, how they were how they were defined, how they were operationalized, maybe like the country of the study, yeah, so where it was conducted, and some like basic information, yeah, that we have to know when we're analyzing the study. Also the results of the studies and the features that may have led to divergent effects of framing on the outcome variables between them. So what were the variables? That could be like maybe like moderators of the effect of this framing on consumer behavior. And the main structure of this review, yeah, was that because like, well, we're interested mostly in structure today, is that in the first, I mean, this is the structure of the section of only of the results. First, researchers described these main characteristics of included studies, and they kind of made some kind of like a table to describe what were these characteristics. Then they described the section about outcome variables, so how these variables were measured in the previous research, how they were defined, and so on. Also, they described elicited consequences. So here this part was like really short, but the main outcome was that they basically compared the frame that was about harm to the environment, and the frame which was like some kind of monetary harm to like monetary consequences to the person who's making a consumer decision. And they compared the effects of these two frames. And also they focused on some moderating and mediating effects. So what were the variables that moderated and mediated the effects? So I don't know, like, for example, it's just from my mind, I don't know, if you're a fan of like animals and environment, probably like the frames or the frame of harming the environment will have more effect on you comparing to the people who doesn't like animals and environment, and they don't really care about it, but they care about their money, so the monetary frame will be more important for them. And also they looked at framing typology, so they also compared the effects and the results of the studies based on which frames were used in these studies. Also, if you remember how this article were organized, you could see a lot of different like tables, a lot of different graphs and so on, because this is what also relates to the content analysis. So if you, for example, count how many studies were conducted, like, I don't know, in Russia, in Europe, in the US, you can make some kind of graph on this, and you can put this like the country of origin of the study to the first part of your review when you're talking about basic characteristics, and then you can kind of like describe it, like illustrate it with the graph or something like this. Okay, so this is basically how this like systematic analysis of literature review is conducted. So for those who haven't seen yet the examples, I like strongly advise you to look at them, at least like really shortly, because of course you will much better understand when you see like the structure of the article yourself, when you see like all this like graphs and tables and so on. It is better to learn with some kind of examples here. Okay, so any questions on this type of analysis? Okay, nice. Then we will move on to another one, which is a qualitative evidence synthesis. So this is a little bit confusing one, because it is also called qualitative systematic review. So just one word apart from the previous one, but the idea of this type of literature review is totally different. So in this type of literature review, QES, we can also like kind of shorten it, is a method that is aimed for integrating or comparing or like synthesizing findings from qualitative studies. So what you're basically focused here on is the results of the qualitative studies on your topic. The main features is that when you kind of like make this review of the qualitative findings of qualitative studies, then you not just make some kind of like synthesis, or just make some kind of like comparison, but also you develop a new theory, you can develop a new narrative on this topic. And also it allows you for wider generalization, because if you, for example, conduct some kind of like qualitative evidence synthesis on the same topic across different countries, across different conditions, and you see some kind of like patterns, some kind of themes that you can extract from all of these different data, so maybe in this way you can generalize the results of these studies more, comparing to like qualitative studies in general, yeah, because in qualitative studies, it is not the point to generalize, yeah, but to look deeper at some kind of phenomena. But in this case, well, generalizability becomes like a little bit less possible. Yeah, so here you're going to look for themes or for constructs that you can find across individual qualitative studies. And we will discuss this one a little bit later in details. And also you create some kind of new interpretation, some kind of new understanding of the phenomena. Or some kind of like values, attitudes. So you basically focus here when you choose whether to do a qualitative evidence synthesis on meta-analysis, or I don't know, like narrative review or systematic review. You should answer yourself a question: what kind of studies are interesting to you? Yeah, and if you are interested in qualitative studies, so these kind of methods can be like actually really useful for you. Okay, so we have also some kind of steps here. First, you have to formulate questions as well. The first step is completely the same as in the first type of literature research, because, well, formulation of questions is in this kind of like systematized literature reviews is the first step basically everywhere. So the researchers who made some kind of like analysis of literature reviews also provide some different not like criteria, but kind of guidelines on how to formulate your question and on what topics you can kind of like focus when you're doing your research and what parts of your analyzing studies. So the first one is already familiar to you. The spider is a little bit different, so you're focusing on sample, phenomenon of interest, design, evaluation, and research type. Yeah, in the perspective. So, what was the perspective of the study in general? Yeah, the setting. So, the location of the study, the timing of the study, and so on. Like phenomenon of interest or a problem of interest. The environment, comparison, which is well, usually optional. Yeah. Here and time and as well findings. So when you are choosing some kind of literature and when you are creating your sample, you can also follow this one of these three like guidelines or like methods for question formulation, because when you formulate a question according to one of these three guidelines, then your search for literature will be conducted in kind of dependent on how you formulate your questions. Then you develop a protocol, and in the protocol you have to state as well what you will focus on, yeah, what will be the phenomenon of your interest, how you will look for it in your studies, yeah, that you analyze. And also protocol is quite close to like this coding list, but not as much, because in the coding list and content analysis, like in the previous type of review, it is more like strict, yeah. So if you have I don't know, the code in your coding list for which states for, I don't know, like definition of your outcome variable, here in the protocol is created more for you to focus on some questions, yeah, on some research questions that you're trying to answer. And also then you search for literature review. You are looking for inclusion and exclusion criteria, as always, which are completely up to you. You're also, after your search have ended, after you have your sample of studies, you assess methodological limitations. So this point is actually also optional, because some researchers argue sometimes on whether you should actually try to evaluate how, like, the quality of the study, because with qualitative studies it is much more difficult than with qualitative, and in quantitative studies what they usually use to assess methodological limitations, to try to understand whether the quality of the research was good enough, is just the rigor of the analysis. And the second point was that you have to, like, the studies should be consistent between, like, the results and research questions. So the results should relate to research question. And basically these are two main points. And also you decide on data extraction and synthesis, the methods of synthesis. And usually here semantic analysis is used. Well, not the semantic analysis, but semantic synthesis. But I'm sure you know the methodology of semantic analysis, from your qualitative methods courses. So, well, semantic synthesis is quite the same, but it, like, just goes beyond initial data, and it is, like, conducted in this qualitative evidence synthesis. That is why it is not analysis but synthesis, but the major steps are quite the same. Also, what are the strengths here is that you can complement the research evidence, of the previous research by reporting first user-reported data, So when you are looking at the results of the of this kind of like, when you're looking at the results which are described in the studies that you are looking at from your sample, you can focus both on how people who are the participants, of these studies behave, how what they report, what they share, their, like, point of views, their like, values, and so on, and also how the researchers who do these studies interpret it as well. And as well, you can sometimes, after this first, like, analysis of the results of these qualitative studies completed, sometimes the second stage of this literature review is to give it to, like, practitioners and to ask them to maybe give some feedback, on how this phenomena works, like in real life, for example, but this relates mostly to more like, practical application focused research. And also findings may be more powerful and generalizable than some isolated comments from local studies, than from which I actually mentioned, like, in the beginning of the section on this type of review. What are the weaknesses is that, just the name of this methods, the name of this type of review, which is sometimes called qualitative systematic review, is quite confusing. You can confuse it with just systematic review, even though they are totally different in their aims, as you can see. And also it has, like, so many other names that I don't, like, even remember them, but they are even mentioned, as far as I remember, in one of in the article that I sent you. And also this is kind of like developing type of research literature review, because it it started to develop when, well, researchers kind of like criticized that most literature reviews, like systematic review or meta-analysis, are focused more on quantitative studies. So there were no like literature review methodology for qualitative studies. So this is quite a new type of literature reviews. And that's why there are some guidelines on how to do it, but they are a little bit not as developed and a little bit not as kind of like stable, as the guidelines for other types of literature review. So three main questions here, is whether which specific methods you can use, in your analysis. Also, whether some comprehensive search strategies are required, so in how you're doing your sample, and also whether the dominant model here is the classic systematic review, so whether your analysis is based on systematic review methods like content analysis, for example, or should it be based more on qualitative research methods, as for example, like grounded theory, or thematic synthesis. And actually you can apply grounded theory to this kind of literature review. It's not a problem, even though probably it will be a little bit more complicated and complex than applying like thematic analysis, but still it is quite possible. So these are the weaknesses, like most of them. Okay, so any questions here? So is it clear what is the difference between doing systematic literature review and qualitative systematic literature review, which is as well called qualitative evidence synthesis?
Yeah, I have one question. Is that I think the second paper is used in the qualitative systematic review, and it's depending on the narrative context. So is how possible like because they will do the selection, and maybe at the end they will select narrow like a small amount of the papers. But how is it possible they will make sure is that they have they can find enough materials or all the materials from each paper?
Yeah, I get it. Thank you for your question. So, well, basically, this is the issue of your like study sampling. So this is one of the weaknesses. So whether you use some specific methods for doing a literature search or not, well, what amount of studies is enough, to conduct this kind of qualitative literature review. And in this case, well, since it is based as well on qualitative studies, which are quite, subjective, in this case, this subjectivity as well goes to this kind of literature review in a way, because it is also like qualitative literature review. And of course, even if you kind of like describe in details why you choose these particular studies for your literature review, still even in the analysis of your data, but like analysis of the results from the existing literature, you can still have like a lot of and well, you not can, but you will definitely have a lot of your own thoughts, that will be like really that can influence the outcome of your research, because it is as well systematic. And for example, even if you take the same sample of the qualitative research on the topic that you're studying, on the topic that you're doing your literature review, still being like a one researcher, a one author, you can provide one results, from the results of other studies, and another person can describe maybe like some other themes, some other topics that are important, and which can be seen throughout all of the studies that are analyzed. So yeah, one of the weaknesses is the, in general, kind of subjectivity of the outcome of this type of literature review, both in how you choose your sample and in the analysis itself. But well, in order to make at least the choice of your sample a little bit less subjective, as well, you can use search words like keywords, yeah, for sampling. As well, you can like explain the choice of your databases, for example. And at least this part will be like a little bit more like objective, probably, yeah, because if another person will use some kind of, I don't know, like keywords, yeah, the same keywords, this person will probably find the same articles, yeah, but the analysis may be different. So yeah, I hope I managed to answer the question at least a little bit.
Sorry, I just I would like to say that each article, at least this one that we discussed right now, has a quite detailed description of selection process and criteria of inclusion-exclusion of articles. And they say, for example, that the first stage of screening included 493 records. And then when they applied all criteria of exclusion, then they got 14 and then 12 articles. So it is possible just to open the paper and read it to see that they at least hardly tried to, I mean, they did their best to prove or to justify their objectivity in this process.
Yeah, basically.
I think I'm not talking about the selection part. I'm talking about analysis part. Is that because according to my reading, I think is that they using the narrative context from each paper. So it's mostly if we talk about qualitative studies, and we know is that sometimes they just use some samples. Is that maybe they have collect about 40 or 50 participants, but in their paper, they maybe only share with us maybe 10 or 12 they think is very specific, or there can be a model of their research question or studies. So is that how possible is that we make sure we could find enough materials from those papers? I'm not talking about selection part, okay?
Yeah, so probably you mean the like the extracts from the interview, yeah, that are provided in these like papers that are analyzed.
Yeah, because I have never do about the qualitative study, but when I talk with my friend who is always use the qualitative study, I think she will like recruit about more than 50 participants, but in the paper she will maybe only mention about 20 or 30 to analysis their like narrative context. They just want to show the samples, so that we know is that they have some limitation of I mean is that for each paper you have the limited for the long, so you couldn't include all of your participants, but they are using kind of like a secondary data from those papers, using the narrative context from maybe this one is 14 papers, right? It's like include for text articles. I mean, is that will they contact with the authors or not? Or only only using the 40 papers when they publish it, that's all.
May I comment here, just a short comment. Firstly, again, this is not only about the content, quantity of papers that is enough or not enough. This is exactly about the selection, because it's qualitative research that is in the it's a field of interest, and it is important to see the selection criteria. So they used certain, by the way, they do not give this list of quality criteria that they applied to select these 14 papers, but they used a number of quality criteria. So this selection satisfies the requirements of their theory, because it's a theory-driven sample, theory-driven selection. So therefore, that it was enough for them to select, to stay only with 14 papers, and actually, because they want such demandful readers as Lina also to be satisfied, they write at the end, not at the end, but in, somewhere at the middle of the paper, that here in this analysis, finally, they used evidence from 300 respondents. 300 informants, you know, are witnessing their problems in whatever, mobility in the urban space. Sorry, it's maybe it's we now go beyond our time frame, and I think it's a very, very interesting question that Lina poses. So why don't we discuss it a little bit? Maybe shall we let's decide whether we discuss this qualitative selection issues also for literature analysis now, and move meta-analysis to the next meeting, if Polina agrees, or we now move to meta-analysis, the third method, and postpone the discussion of sampling issue.
I think we can move on with that, because we have three. The third one didn't introduce, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So
I think that's my personal question. I think is that why we should move on.
No. I think it's a very, very important methodological question.
Okay, so I get it that we're moving on, yeah, to okay. So just shortly discussing this example, yeah, was something about like old people, some traveling somewhere, yeah. So it's not that interesting for us, but also like the sampling procedures here. Also what the question that Lina raised is connected to, I guess, not even the sampling of the articles, yeah, but as well that when you're doing this kind of analysis, you are not only focused, and your analysis and your results not only based on the exact like quotes from the respondents, but as well they are based on the interpretation of the researchers. So that is how you can kind of take a little bit more like respondents in your focus, yeah. So this is like two-sided, so you can analyze exactly the parts of the interviews that are given in the articles, and also you analyze the interpretations made by researchers. And throughout looking throughout these interpretations, you can also identify the themes for your analysis. So yeah, the sampling was a little bit complicated, a little bit more complicated than previous studies, because they used the search in databases, then they supplemented with the hand searches of key journals, and how you decide on what journals are key journals is also the question. Also, then they used references from from the articles they found on the first and the second step, and also they asked some leading researchers in the field to recommend and to assess their sampling. Yeah, so this last part can also like be quite useful, I guess. Yeah, because maybe you could like just skip some kind of important research that you haven't noticed during the first three steps of your sampling. And also they didn't take all of the articles that they found, as Elena Stislavna mentioned, because they used some kind of combination of keywords which is not reported here, unfortunately. But they only included studies with people who are more than like 60 or more years old. And also limited to the experiences of everyday travel in urban environment. And also these people should be also urban and from the areas of the UK. So the study was like quite particular. So here is the scheme, and the methodology used here is that they kind of created some kind of standardized forms in which people who were coding or like analyzing the text should put like aims, study details, study design, analytical methods, key results. So in order to make some kind of like general description of the studies analyzed. Also, the data extraction was undertaken by one reviewer, checked by another one. And the main part is the conduction of thematic analysis, thematic synthesis approach, not only because this is like the most used approach in this kind of literature review, but because it mirrors thematic analysis that was used in primary studies, so in the studies that they study. So they kind of do thematic analysis of the results of thematic analysis of previous studies. And three steps of thematic analysis, as you know, like line by line coding, then grouping the related codes in broader themes, and then creating, like identifying links between these described themes. And that is how they conducted their analysis. And the structure is much more simpler than the previous studies. Is that in the first part of the results section, they just summarize in a table some general study characteristics, like the first mentioned in the first point. And also they describe 4 analytical themes that emerged during the analysis, and then as well as, or in like just like ordinary qualitative research, they did some kind of interpretation, and they used citations from the other researchers, from the respondents from the other studies. So basically the the main part of presentation of the results is quite closer to like the normal presentation of the results in the qualitative studies that employs interviews. So because in this case, the interviews were used in the studies that were analyzed. Okay, so meta-analysis. So we have like a little bit more than 10 minutes for this. But since it applies a lot of different like statistical stuff that we're not going to discuss in details today, because this is the topic for just like another seminar. But just for you to know what meta-analysis is the techniques that statistically combines the results of quantitative studies, to provide the results on the effect. And in this way, you are only analyzing quantitative studies which focus on particular variables and which focus on particular connection between variables. So here, what is required is that you have to include only the studies that are like really similar to each other. So that the studies in which the outcome variables and predictor are defined like more or less closely, more or less similarly. Also, the population that is being studied also should be quite the same, and intervention as well. And also, this requires that the same measure of the outcome should be measured, and in the same way and in the same time intervals, which makes meta-analysis quite a complex literature review type, in the way that it is really, really hard to find the same measurements across the literature review. Of course, maybe you will have like some studies that employ the same like question wordings, for example, and the same scales, yeah. But in general, all the variables are measured, well, a little bit different, except for maybe some variables like trust, which have like a really kind of like developed methodology to measure, or some maybe like psychological characteristics like Big Five or something like this. And the steps is first you do a literature search, and also you include some kind of like small narrative literature review in the beginning of your study. And also then you decide as well on inclusion criteria, yeah, inclusion and exclusion as well, connected mostly to the variables that are available in the articles that you found. Then you calculate the effect sizes, decide, like do the basic meta-analysis of the data, and decide on whether your model should be fixed effects or random effects. This means that, sometimes you can consider that the effects are quite the same to each other. Yeah, in some studies, you can consider that the effect of the like on the outcome variable it can be like distorted by some other maybe variable or something like this. So this is the basic difference here. And also when you calculate the effect sizes, mainly you focus on average, like on the means and on correlations. So, kind of like, so to say, you just take the correlations from other studies, yes, from the results, from the kind of generalized results from other studies, and look at these correlations. You do not have, of course, the samples that were used for these studies that you analyzed, but you have the results. And you kind of like statistically analyze the results of the of some kind of like statistical computation based on some kind of samples or something like this. And also after you do your basic analysis, you do some more advanced analysis. You can look for some moderators, as in the example article. Also, you have to estimate publication bias. So we're not going into details, yeah, but just for you to know that basically the researchers use here Intel's fail-safe N and funnel plot. So in this case, this is the issue about like published and unpublished articles. And also you test for existence of heterogeneity, yeah, because it also can create some issues in data analysis, yeah, because the data should not be too heterogeneous, because it means that it is like really different and you cannot basically like compare the results of the analysis to each other. And also then you report and interpret the results as you do in any quantitative study. What are the strengths is that here you can overcome bias of narrative literature review, yeah. So also in this way you are like more systematic as into previous literature review types, and also you kind of like more precise, yeah, and you have kind of more power to detect small but significant effects that cannot be detected sometimes when you have like the samples of the population, but not the samples of the results of the studies. And also transparency, as always, is a strength, yeah. So you have to reveal like all of the decisions you made during your data analysis, and also the description of your steps of the analysis should be like really, really detailed. What are the weaknesses is first the bias in sampling the findings, yeah, because as well we always have the bias when we do some kind of sampling procedures. Second weakness is called garbage in and garbage out. So basically it means that when you do meta-analysis, sometimes you can mix some so-called like good research and bad research, yeah. This is mostly about the quality of the results. Because you cannot basically you cannot control for like all the conditions, that were present in the studies that you analyzed. So sometimes you can include in your analysis articles which are unfortunately not too like high in their quality, like on the quality of sample, for example, or the quality of analysis. Also, the problem with non-independence of ethics, because sometimes you can mix in one analysis independent and not independent samples, which should be basically analyzed separately. Also, emphasis on individual effects, because meta-analysis focuses only on the results of the studies which are based on individuals. So we are looking at this kind of statistics. And the last one is combining apples and oranges. So it means that, well, this is connected to the problem of how your outcome and predictor variables are defined and measured in the studies that you analyzed. But some researchers say that, well, if you want to generalize about the fruit, you can combine apples and oranges, and that is not such a problem. But still, you should be very, very careful when you are choosing the variables that you're going to include in your analysis. So that the essence of these measures shouldn't be like too different. And the example here is also about the media. So the article analyzes how Facebook makes you lonely, or how it doesn't make you lonely. So the research question was basically to examine the relationship between Facebook use and loneliness using meta-analysis. So this is what was the aim. And two research questions that were stated: what is the correlation between Facebook use and loneliness? And do lonely people with low social skills, shyness and social support, use Facebook, or does Facebook cause loneliness? So this is the story about moderators. And here they used also some kind of sampling techniques. So there were three criteria for choosing which studies will be used. First is that use of Facebook should mean that you use a social networking with appropriate measurement. So also, like, for example, how many hours or how many minutes a day you use Facebook or something like this. Also, some measures of loneliness defined as inability, unwillingness, or emotional feeling, inability to experience, develop satisfactory social relationship. So loneliness cannot be called just loneliness, in these studies, but some other words as well. And also use of quantitative data that could be like permit the estimation of an effect size. So in your studies that you analyzed, the effect sizes should be present. So you can just like take this data from this analysis. Also, the sampling was through electronic databases. They used some particular keywords. And they use reference sections of the studies found, in their analysis as well. And in methodology, we will also not pay like too much attention to this, because this is the issue of statistical analysis. But in general, they used correlation coefficients as a main common metric for all the studies that are analyzed. They average these correlations, they are weighted them, and also they studied moderator variables, and moderators were using like both within between group comparison, and in the end they used a less regression model in their analysis. And they used two kind of variables: is type of measure of Facebook use, which was measured differently in different studies, and measurement of loneliness as well, a few different types of how loneliness was measured, but still the results were combined. in the literature review. And in the results, they first described overall statistics, overall analysis. So what was the average correlation? And they conducted like a chi-square test. Also, they described how they examine potential moderated features. So here, this part was about analyzing separately different measures of these two variables of interest. And then in the last section, they tested this causal model. So they were trying to understand whether the Facebook is a use of Facebook is a moderator of loneliness, or loneliness is the moderator of Facebook use. And in this case, well, the Facebook use caused loneliness, as far as I remember. So yeah, this is also the last type of analysis of literature review, that we're discussing today. So just for you to know that it exists, but it has a lot of nuances connected to statistical analysis. So, okay, we don't have any time left, but well, maybe some like final questions if you have.
Yeah, I would like to add. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to add that there are several packages for R and Python language that could be used for meta-analysis. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So basically, I did not conduct like meta-analysis myself. In R, like I use R, but I found one script that could be useful. So probably I will just send all the materials, and as well, I just forgot to add a literature review. I mean, the list of references here to the presentation, so I can make the list of references which I used today, and share with you as well through Elena Rostislavna. And I can send you as well this document for meta-analysis in R. So I hope this would be useful for you, and I soon will also like try to use it as well. And also I know that Lina found this like book on doing meta-analysis in R. So I looked at this book as well. So I guess you can use this one as some general guidelines. But nevertheless, I will send you another source that I found as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Polina. I think, unfortunately, the time is over. And I think today we received a very condensed and short version of the whole course. I think that it should have been made like a course for students, PhD students, master students, research fellows, and so on. And maybe some of you colleagues who are present here also use R and can help instruct all who would like to have at least a small short idea how to conduct it. Maybe we could somehow benefit from you. I mean, first of all, those who have experience of doing this meta-analysis using R, and actually all of you who are doing meta-analysis. But even without meta-analysis, we can see that these methods of conducting various types of literature review is the whole world, the new world for many of us, because we are used to do this narrative, traditional narrative literature review. But of course, systematic analysis, whether quantitative or qualitative, and other terms and approaches mentioned today by Polina, open very new and great windows of opportunities for us today. So I wish our PhD students, our master students, our colleagues, good luck with learning about it and trying to use it. Of course, it's not enough. I mean, this workshop is great. Thank you very much, but it's not enough. We want to have more information and more practice to put hands on, so to say, these methods, approaches. So I encourage at least our group of PhD students to continue your trip towards our common goal, towards new knowledge that could be acquired as appeared from this using these methods of literature review based on systematization of data. Thank you so much. So I don't know, I don't see any hands except by greeting hands, and I don't see also questions in the chat. But if anybody has questions and comments, please send to the chats you are joining, and I can forward them to Polina, and we can maybe meet in the future again and discuss this. Maybe next time we meet and invite Polina when some of you are ready with your literature review, and then we will discuss it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you can approach me by email, so you'll have it in your Outlook system. Yeah, so don't hesitate to ask if you have any questions or if you have some suggestions, maybe. Okay, thank you for inviting me again, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much, Polina.
Would it be possible to receive your presentation? Actually, we have this record. Okay, great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Professor.